Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I thought we were going to die.
Another fire at an SRO, leaving dozens of already vulnerable people homeless.
What do we want?
Cola!
When do we want it?
Now!
Plus, adding pressure, how job action is escalating in a strike of 33,000 government workers in BC.
The social consciousness of the world right now is shifting and changing.
Cutting back on our clothing waste, a Vancouverite making sustainability more accessible.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. Around 60 residents have been forced from their homes after an apparent explosion on Vancouver's downtown Eastside. Several buildings caught on fire, and as Isabel Regam tells us, this is just the latest blaze in the area, displacing already vulnerable people.
I thought we were going to die because it was that loud and the building moved.
Jeffrey Allison is among dozens of residents displaced from their homes on Powell Street near Princess. He's still shaken by what he experienced around 3:30 this morning.
I wake my wife up and I said, it is time for us to go. Okay, so I said it's on fire outside. And as I said that, another very loud explosion that shook the entire building, right, down to the foundation.
Fire crews say whatever caused the initial explosion blew out several windows before flames spread to the inside of the buildings.
About an hour into it, the ceiling collapsed and we pulled crews out and went defensive.
And I banged a couple of people's door on the second floor to try to wake people up.
Stephen Saki says he's not only lost his belongings, but likely also his livelihood.
I lost all my drums. I have like 65 drums in there. Djembe, dundun, congas. Because I teach drum, I teach schools, and my business is actually my drums in there.
Rain City Housing, which runs two of the SROs impacted by the fire, says staff are confident they'll be able to find temporary shelter spaces for all residents for the next few days. But it's not clear what's available beyond that.
There's this huge gap between what's needed and what is available currently. And so obviously the loss of any housing supply at this point is a really significant loss.
No worries. Amongst the tragedy of homes lost, the community coming together. Neighbors living at this social housing complex across the street working throughout the morning and afternoon to collect donations for displaced residents.
Kind of put our heads together to see what we could do on our own and just to go and see about getting coffee or breakfast or food.
Allison is grateful everyone was able to get out in time and for the community support.
Your life is just gone. It's just gone.
But he admits it's going to take time to come to terms with the magnitude of the loss and yet another blow to those living in the downtown East Side. Isabel Regam, CBC News, Vancouver.
And staying on the downtown East Side, one man is dead after a confrontation with police. It's the latest violent incident involving officers in the area. As Joel Ballard reports, community members say it's becoming concerningly common.
This is the spot where the man's body laid for much of the morning. I'm at the corner of East Hastings and Dunlevy. Police say they were called to the area shortly before 8 a.m. on reports of a man acting erratically. When they arrived, police say there was a confrontation. The man went into distress and died despite life-saving efforts. But witnesses tell a much different story. A worker at this corner store tells CBC the man came into the store, grabbed milk, and poured it on himself after apparently being bear sprayed. A second witness confirms that moments later, the man was shot multiple times by police with a beanbag gun outside the store.
I wonder if this could have been managed better. Did it have to result in him getting, put down? Could have been prevented maybe.
A beanbag gun is a common weapon used by police. It's supposed to be a non-lethal option.
It's meant to stop them, to stun them for that instantaneous second where police officers can consider what option they have available at this point or take the individual into custody.
Here on the downtown East Side, there's frustration and anger over what seems like unavoidable death. In the past month, there have been multiple violent police-involved situations. Advocates like the team at the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users are calling for a decrease in police presence.
We need them to stand down until the humanitarian crisis of the Hastings tent city is resolved.
And some who live here say they feel targeted.
We are not third-class citizens. We are all human beings. And it just feels like the cops are just protecting the rich and the powerful.
CBC News reached out to the Vancouver Police Department for an interview, but they never responded. The Independent Investigations Office confirms it is looking into police actions. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
A strike affecting dozens of sectors across BC is escalating. The BC General Employees Union is bringing in a ban on overtime. And as Mira Baines reports, all workers except for wildfire fighters are being asked to refuse the extra work, except in cases where it's deemed essential.
What do we want? COLA! When do we want it? Now!
As workers picket, they're increasing pressure on the province in another way. The union says the overtime ban is so government acknowledges chronic understaffing, high turnover, and excessive workloads employees are faced with. These employees at liquor and cannabis distribution warehouses in the second week of targeted job action, restricting supply orders for retailers, restaurants, and bars. The new overtime ban is not expected to affect essential service levels and wildfire fighters dealing with critical situations.
A lot of ministries rely on the voluntary overtime of our members. And as of today, we're asking our members not to do that anymore. We want to highlight those workload issues. We want to highlight those staffing issues. Court services, for example, there are a lot of vacancies that haven't been filled. There's been high staff turnovers, both on the side of the sheriffs as well as the court clerks. They do a lot of overtime.
The BC Public Service Agency says recently the parties participated in exploratory talks. At the conclusion of those discussions, the BCGEU informed the PSA that it was not interested in resuming formal discussions at this time. Neither side seems to be budging. The union, representing 33,000 workers, says it wants wages to keep up with the cost of living and says it will come back to the bargaining table if presented with a meaningful offer. The government says its offer includes wage increases averaging up to 11% for BCGEU members over 3 years, a $2,500 signing bonus, and some inflation protection in the last year. Already, businesses, including cannabis retailers and restaurants, say they're feeling the effects of the strike. The province is limiting liquor sales. Customers are restricted to no more than 3 of any individual item per customer each day, with beer exempt. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
While those workers are on strike, others are simply calling in sick. New data compiled by CBC News shows sick leave among BC healthcare workers has dramatically increased since the start of the pandemic. As Janella Hamilton reports, the system is facing extreme pressures.
Healthcare workers across BC continue to feel the mounting pressures of the pandemic, with ongoing staffing shortages and endless overtime taking its toll.
When they are continuously called upon to pick up extra shifts, to extend their shifts from 12 hours to 16 hours or more, nurses are human beings. They're not robots.
And although the province is not able to pinpoint exactly what is causing a rise in work absences, experts say a spike in COVID infections and burnout are major factors.
Overtime being used as a staffing strategy is not healthy for anyone.
According to numbers from the Ministry of Health, over the last month, nearly 10% of workers in the healthcare system called in sick for at least one day during a given week. That's compared to 6% before the pandemic started. This SFU health researcher says more government support is needed, including extra steps to reduce COVID transmission.
We have essentially thrown out the infection prevention and control measures, including the separation of positive patients from negative patients, the discontinuation of routine testing.
Over the past few months, staffing shortages due to sick leave has led to the temporary closures of ER departments, and it's only expected to get worse into the fall.
We're going to be seeing at least one more wave this year, if not two.
As of right now, 1/3 of nurses in BC are working overtime. That's about 5 to 6% more than any other province. The Ministry of Health says it is continuing to create hiring initiatives and mental health programs for healthcare workers, including 602 new nursing seats. But Gear says that is just a drop in the bucket and little is being done to retain workers currently in the system.
We need to see the government show us some respect, and nurses have not felt respected for a very long time.
The nurses' union's collective agreement with the province is now expired, and while there is no word yet about whether or not job action is on the horizon, Gear says they are set to go to the bargaining table at the beginning of October. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
More details are emerging about a wedding that turned tragic in West Vancouver this past weekend. 2 people were killed and more were sent to hospital after a car crashed into a celebration. Zara Premji has more on those who died and the search for answers as to how and why this happened.
We've learned 2 women in their 60s died on scene at the wedding that took place at the home down that driveway. 7 people were taken to hospital, with 2 in critical condition. It's still early stages of the investigation, but what we know so far is the wedding had about 50 people in attendance and that the home belonged to the groom's family. Police say a woman in her late 60s was driving a 2016 Range Rover on a shared driveway. She accelerated forward and crashed into multiple people at the wedding, killing the 2 women and injuring many others.
We will be exploring everything. We will make sure that if there is an element of criminality, that will be explored. We don't have the answers yet as to what took place, but that is our role, is to determine the why and the how.
Family members and vendors at the event have declined speaking to CBC as they grieve and process what took place in this tragic turn of events. BC Emergency Health Services say 12 units, including 11 ground and 1 air ambulance, were dispatched to the scene. And neighbors describe it as tragic and chaotic.
Very, very busy. But, and one man hugged and said, don't worry, but very busy. Just police and ambulance is here close together.
Now, while police say it's still too early to know what exactly led to this incident, they will be speaking to everyone who was at the wedding.
We have 2 people that have died as a result of this collision, and we want to make sure that we get as many answers as we can associated to this.
Now, police say no factors are being taken off the table, but for now, the driver remains in hospital. Zara Premji, CBC News, West Vancouver.
Hundreds of UBC students have been hard at work building an autonomous sailboat that can venture across the Pacific Ocean. The plan is for the sailbot to go from Victoria to Maui. And as Ali Patarage reports, there's hope for redemption as the team's last sailbot got lost at sea.
UBC engineering students are all hands on deck prepping this autonomous sailboat for a voyage across the Pacific Ocean. She is the sailbot known as Ray, standing 20 feet tall, bearing 2 sails that will help them course through more than 2,300 kilometers of ocean water, departing from Victoria to Maui, Hawaii, with no captain aboard nor navigators guiding her from afar. The sailbot was designed entirely by students and took 6 years to build.
We really want to push the limits of engineering and push the limits of the marine industry, right? So autonomous technology is super in right now.
But the UBC sailbot team had a turbulent history with Ray's predecessor, Ada, which they launched in 2016 from Newfoundland en route to Ireland. Ada made it 800 kilometers before a severe weather storm hit, and she drifted off course a third of the way in. She wasn't spotted again until after a year and a half off the coast of Florida.
Ray is roughly the same length as Ada, but is slightly wider, which will give her more stability to weather the Pacific Ocean currents and hopefully arrive in Maui in one piece.
The team says they still consider Ada a success because of the many lessons they've learned since.
Everything that we're doing for Ray and for our subsequent projects is built off of that first step. Having kind of unfinished business with a full ocean crossing is a real driving force behind Ray.
It's really testing our design and testing how well we were able to build a robust system. So if she ends up in Japan, she ends up in Japan.
But students who also worked on Ada are rooting for Ray to make it.
I want to see the headline that Ray has made it to Hawaii. I think that would be a testament to the ingenuity of the students.
And when Ray embarks, they'll also take to heart a bittersweet sign of encouragement from her namesake, naval engineer and innovator Ray Montague.
basically sent her a letter and received a very nice response from her, and then possibly a few months later she actually passed away. It's nice that this project can live on with her blessing.
The students plan to launch Ray before the end of the summer, hoping to turn the tide on shipwrecks past. Ali Patarga, CBC News, Vancouver.
Johanna is off this week. Amy Bell joins us now with the forecast. Amy, that boat probably going to make it to Maui in time for our bad weather when they have good weather.
It's a great day for your autonomous boat out there today, yeah. No, it's been a hot one, and that's how it's going to stay. So definitely a good time to be outside. Currently, we are seeing things cooling down a little bit, but not too much. 24 still at Vancouver Airport, Pitt Meadows at 27. Same story for Abbotsford and up to about 28 in Hope. Of course, with the humidity feeling a little bit warmer, as you can tell. For tomorrow, what we are going to see is things settling down. So we saw quite unsettled weather today, very unstable in areas of the Caribou and the Kootenays. So the south and central interior are dealing with a lot of thunder and lightning. So we'll keep an eye on those lightning strikes. We do still have a risk of that overnight in those areas and early tomorrow morning, but then things should settle down sort of across the province as we see this ridge of high pressure really setting up. For us here in the lower mainland and up in the Fraser Valley, we're just looking at sunshine for the foreseeable future. We'll see that heat really peaking midweek. So these temperatures here, the mid to high 20s, that's all when you're close to the water. As you move further inland towards the Fraser Valley, we'll see those temperatures in the low 30s for Wednesday especially, starting to ease a little bit though for Thursday and Friday. So we'll keep the sunshine, but we're going to lose that real hot heat and just see things settling down into that sort of mid 20 range. So a little bit more comfortable weather coming up.
No kidding, not bad. Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Well, did you know the average Canadian throws out 81 pounds of clothing and textiles each year? So how do you make your fashion fix more sustainable? We have some tips and tricks coming up. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. Okay, here's the question. Can the best coffee in the world be found in New Brunswick? Well, one man seems to think so. The Vietnamese coffee merchant wants to shake up the Canadian market with beans and techniques from his native homeland. Take a look.
My coffee is the best coffee in the world because you can feel the aroma and the taste very clearly, and you have a long aftertaste, and you can feel the sweet from the coffee without putting the sugar in. Wow. I come to Canada. I want to bring something new about coffee to the new market. The best coffees in the world is depend on the way you love it. We must know what we want from our coffee. So we must choose the right bean, and I understand about the bean, and then I know how to roast. So the most important thing and the most differently from me and others is roasting skill. I understand the profile, how to run the machine. I understand how to make the final one. So that is the big difference. In Vietnam now we are famous for the Robusta coffee, and the processing for the bean in Vietnam is really amazing. If you drink my coffee, you can see that it have a very long aftertaste. You will wow, it's amazing. To enter a new market like Canada, I'm the new one here, newcomer, so I will start it with the very small capacity of the roasting machine and espresso machine to test the market and to let the people know that I'm here, and people know about my quality about the coffee, and I see how they react to my quality. But now I have a very good side from the people around me, and they said that, oh, your coffee is really amazing. The next step, maybe I'm going to open a coffee shop. It's not really a coffee shop that you just come and drink coffee. It's a coffee center or maybe coffee and friends. Then you can come and you can meet people and you can have good coffee and we can talk about coffee. Yeah.
Welcome back. Well, if you're trying to lead a greener, more sustainable life, one thing you could start with are the clothes on your back. An average Canadian throws out about 81 pounds of textiles each year. So the question is, how do we cut that back? Jamila Pomeroy launches her new series here today, A Happier Planet. Take a look.
Hi, my name is Jamila Pomeroy. I am a writer, model, actor, and filmmaker based in Vancouver, BC. I've been passionate about the environment my whole life, and I'm especially interested in making sustainability more accessible and a little bit more fun. I want to show you that sustainability is an opportunity for us to get creative and innovative, all in the name of leaving the planet better than how we found it. Being kinder to the environment isn't something that only impacts the world on a larger scale. It also means that we can strengthen our communities, support local businesses, and learn more about each other. There are so many things wrong with the fashion industry, like pollution, water consumption, human rights issues, and there's a lot of textile waste. The average Canadian throws away 81 pounds of textile waste each year. Reducing this waste is one of the most effective ways we can lower our environmental footprint. For some, it may look like purchasing new clothes from sustainable brands, whereas for others, it may look like thrifting, mending clothes, or choosing garments that are timeless. For me, it's shopping for pre-loved clothing at my favorite consignment store. Let's check it out. I could shop in here all day, but to learn about things from a brand perspective, I spoke to designer Kirsten Lay. Kirsten has made a name for herself in sustainable fashion, walking runways in Paris, New York, and Tokyo.
The consumer now is educated and very intelligent. I think the consumers are the ones that are making the industry change, which is amazing because normally, the industry would tell the consumers what they want, they would go and buy, but I like that the social consciousness of the world right now is shifting and changing, especially with the newer generations.
So obviously you start with a sketch or, kind of like an idea of how you want something to look, but is this basically the next step, picking out fabric?
I usually start with just like a very rough sketch.
Right.
And then I'll work from there, I'll make my technical flat from there, and that's what I send to production. The fabric decision process is amazing and exciting because every couple of years there's like a new product, a new material that is sustainable. I didn't think I would have an option to create a waterproof jacket because I thought all materials that will be waterproof, that would be polyester, are not going to be sustainable and I won't be able to use them. And so I just recently discovered this recycled polyester that is waterproof.
So cool.
So that's why I'm always trying to learn more and find different materials that are being created. And I think that's just really exciting to be at this place in time where this is a really important factor now in material production. There are some brands that are extremely trendy and really like to crank out exactly what's like the latest, and as quickly as it comes into public attention, it'll kind of burn out and fizzle out. I think we just really need to be careful about creating designs that, if we don't want them to be discarded, maybe not go so crazy into that trend. I tend to focus more on classic staple pieces that, yes, they are trendy, they are avant-garde, they are fashionable, but it's something that you can wear still in 10 years. I want my clothing to have a second life, a third life, a fourth life, and maybe be passed down through generations, or for someone to find it in a boutique and for it to be worn again.
I think the biggest thing that I love about shopping for used clothing is just the adventure. I have a pretty specific list of things that I look for when I am thrifting or shopping for pre-loved items. I generally don't look at the tag. Like, I don't really care what the brand is. I'm more so concerned with like looking at the seams, seeing how the inside of the garment is intact. I personally like to stick with natural fibers and natural fabrics just because I find you generally get more wear out of them. I also generally try to stick with things that I think are timeless, and I stay away from super trends just because you don't know how long you'll be able to wear that. Is it gonna still be in style in a couple of years? So I try to go with, you know, like classic dress lines, or, you know, you can never go wrong with a great pair of jeans, or, you know, a classic white tee. So whether you choose to purchase new clothing from a sustainable designer, pre-loved clothing from a consignment store or thrift store, or you choose timeless classics that'll last you for years to come, you have the power to lower your environmental footprint with what you wear.
The daughter of a prominent Russian ultranationalist was killed in Moscow on the weekend, while Russia is pointing the finger at Ukraine. Next.
There's a new fad sweeping the country. Well, it's sort of an old fad that's come back again. It was big for a while in the 1960s and had a revival in the 1970s. Now, as Dan Bjarnason tells us, skateboarding is back once more, and it's bigger than ever in the 1980s.
From one end of the country to the other, and in most of what's in between, they're back. Like a reincarnation, these shingles on wheels keep on returning from beyond. After the 60s and again in the 70s, they're with us again in their third life. By some estimates, it's the fastest growing sport, hobby, silliness, whatever, in the country. This summer, thousands and thousands are sold each month in Canada alone. They're peddled in more than 500 stores. That's more skateboard stores than McDonald's hamburgers. It's a mania. Harry Gladstone is 17. This summer, he set up a shop and so far has sold $25,000 worth of skateboards.
Well, it takes up my whole life, basically. I eat, sleep, drink, and live it.
Rudy Atzmuller Sr. has been selling sports goods for 30 years here in Toronto, mostly bicycles. Rudy Jr. here had a word with Dad about what's up these days. The word is bikes are back, back in the dark ages.
So far this summer, how many bicycles?
None. Not one. It's just ridiculous. I still get bicycles there, I can give them away. People don't want them, yeah? How's it going, okay?
There's no end to the trinkets, toys, and tools. Books and magazines, video cassettes, designer clothes, wheels, spare parts, bearings, side rails, risers, and gadgets called coppers, birds, and additional add-ons. It's a pastime not without its moments. It's claimed, though, that all this is as safe as bike riding. It's attitude, apparently, that counts.
It's a little bit dangerous, but, you know, it just clears your mind and everything.
Fine, but if you prefer to keep your mind and your pocketbook open, even safety is packaged to pass as preppy, starting with shoes, about $60. Shin pads, $10. Knee pads, they're around $70. Shorts, $50. Elbow pads, $50. Wrist pads, $40 would do it. Helmet, $80. So these extras, these afterthoughts could run up to
$200, right up to $500 for safety equipment.
skateboarding, a fad for now,
We'll be skating till we die.
or a cause for the ages. How long are you going to do this?
Forever.
Dan Bjarnason, CBC News.
The daughter of a prominent Putin supporter was killed in Moscow in a car bombing on Saturday. The Kremlin has been quick to lay the blame on a Ukrainian national who allegedly fled to Estonia. But as Chris Brown reports, observers see propaganda behind the investigation as Russia's invasion of Ukraine enters its 6th month.
This is the face of a killer, or so says Russia's secret police, the FSB, but their story has a lot of holes. It claims the video shows a Ukrainian woman, Natalia Vovk, entering the building where Daria Dugina lived to spy on her. Dugina, who was 29, was killed after a bomb was remotely detonated under her car Saturday night near Moscow, as her father Alexander, who might have been the real target, watched. The FSB claims that Vovk was working for Ukraine's secret police. It released other video clips purportedly showing her driving her Mini Cooper into Russia and then leaving Sunday, the day after the blast, crossing into Estonia with her 12-year-old daughter.
When I see Western media, I ask myself how the people could lie in such a way.
Alexander Dugin was a fierce Russian nationalist who long advocated for war with Ukraine. His daughter was a pundit in her own right, but of late, neither had really been central figures in Russia's war in Ukraine. This Canadian expert suspects the FSB is blaming Ukraine to cover its own tracks.
The goal of the FSB is to provoke outrage within members of Russian society or the Russian public, to distract away from some of the problems that are happening on the military front.
But having a Ukrainian woman cross the border into heavily protected Moscow, plant a bomb, and then leave with her daughter, that doesn't look too good for the FSB, does it?
This is not looking good for the Putin regime, even if this is a strategy intended to stoke outrage of the sort that I just mentioned.
The Kremlin released a statement calling Dugina's murder a despicable crime, but Ukrainian officials dismissed that. On the battlefield, Ukraine's military is now regularly striking targets deep behind Russian front lines, disrupting supplies and logistics, and perhaps also creating infighting within Russia's leadership. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
The Chancellor of Germany is in Canada for a 3-day visit. He has stops in Montreal, Toronto, and Newfoundland. As David Thurton shows us, the trip is focusing on energy, trade, and the war in Ukraine.
On day 2 of his visit, a slight stumble, but a quick save from the German Chancellor. He and his country know a thing or two about making the wrong move. Scholz admits over the years, Germany has been too reliant on Russia for fuel.
We want to move out of our dependency of Russian gas supplies.
Europe and Germany face the prospect of a tough winter as Russia attempts to blame gas supply cuts on a broken turbine. But Scholz and Trudeau say the Kremlin is weaponizing fuel in an attempt to divide allies.
What Russia is doing is splitting population, splitting allies, splitting all those who are supporting the Ukraine.
So Putin's decision to invade, to try and weaken us, has actually led countries like Canada and Germany to stand even closer together.
Closer together defeating Russia and Ukraine, but also, they say, working together in other areas, like harnessing the potential of so-called green hydrogen. When burned, it doesn't produce any carbon emissions. When windmills and other renewables are used to extract the H2 molecule from water, it leaves an even lower carbon footprint.
Newfoundland and Labrador is one of the windiest places on Earth.
On Tuesday, Scholz and Trudeau will visit a town in Newfoundland and Labrador with big hopes of producing green hydrogen for Canada and the world.
But now every time I go outside and the wind is in my face, I'm smiling because I know the economic, innovative green projects that are coming here because of it.
Hydrogen in Canada remains but a hope. Large-scale production remains a long ways off, too far off to help solve the energy crisis that Germany and Europe faces this winter. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
The lone survivor of a vicious stabbing at an Ottawa home is still trying to come to terms with losing both her mom and her sister. Nearly 2 months ago, a neighbor's 21-year-old son walked into their suburban house and attacked the three with a knife. Now the 19-year-old is sharing her experience. The CBC's Avantika Anand has more and a warning that the story contains distressing details.
Streamers and balloons from Catherine Reddy and her mother's birthday still hang in their living room. For the 19-year-old, being back in her childhood home triggers nightmares and flashbacks.
When I'm sitting here right now with you and I'm talking about things, right, I'm half of me is here, half of me is constantly replaying what happened that night.
On the night of June 27th, after chatting with her father, who was working in Barbados at the time, Catherine and her sister Jasmine changed into their PJs to get ready for bed. That's when the son of their next-door neighbor, Joshua Graves, knocked on their door, asking for help.
And immediately I knew something was wrong. So I sat at the opposite end of the room in the living room. He took one sip of the glass of water that my mom had offered him, put it down, and he stabbed my mom in front of me.
In the struggle that ensued, the killer attacked all three victims. The mother and youngest daughter died here, with Anne-Marie's body wrapped around Jasmine, trying to protect her little girl. Only Catherine managed to make it past this garage. Out on the street, police ordered the man to drop his weapon. When he refused, 3 officers shot him dead, hitting Catherine as well. But she wouldn't learn about her mom and sister's deaths till hours later in the hospital.
I have never felt more alone my whole entire life, and I don't think I ever will.
Her father, Raphael Reddy, felt helpless after hearing of the news from afar.
I heard that she was going to be okay, and that really gave me a huge sense of relief.
Catherine spent 24 days in the hospital, sustaining multiple stab wounds, a bullet, and a broken leg. Now, nearly 2 months later, father and daughter are finally ready to turn a new chapter on this tragedy together.
My sister never graduated high school. My sister will never go to university. My sister will never be married. Yet I am here, gifted at a second chance at life.
Catherine says she's ready to go back to university, while her father, Raphael, has vowed to devote the rest of his life to raising awareness about violence against women.
Unless we really educate everyone and the next generation, it's going to continue happening.
Avantika Anand, CBC News, Ottawa.
Turning to COVID-19 now, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the face of the U.S. effort against the virus, says he's leaving government in December. That will end a 50-year run for the infectious diseases specialist, but it was during the pandemic that he became a household name, making daily public pronouncements on vaccines, masks, and other measures. The Trump administration came to oppose his cautious approach. And some big news on the COVID vaccine front today. Moderna has announced a major Canadian order for its new bivalent vaccine. It targets both Omicron and the original strain of the virus, and shots could be available by the fall. Lisa Shing has more.
As fall gets closer, Canada is speeding up its response to a potential surge in COVID-19 cases.
We're introducing a bit of a new tool in our toolkit.
If approved, Moderna will supply the country with 12 million doses of an adapted vaccine targeting the Omicron BA.1 variant that also protects against the original strain of the coronavirus. Health Canada told CBC News it's currently reviewing the data and will make a regulatory decision in the next 2 weeks. Last week, Britain became the first country in the world to authorize it.
This is kind of going towards a bit of a flu-like type of model with the flu vaccine. Every year we change the strain.
In fact, it's a bit like playing catch-up. Ottawa has also asked Moderna and Pfizer to submit data for vaccines that target other subvariants as soon as possible, considering BA.1 now accounts for less than 1% of recent cases. For now, Canadians are weighing their options.
whoever want to do it, I respect them, but I'm just feel like I'm fine with my 3 vaccines.
If I think I need it, then maybe, but I'm not too worried about it. Kind of as life's opening up, things are going back to normal now, so.
They said something is coming out in the fall, so I will hold out, but yeah, more safety, that's good.
Having the original version won't necessarily do anything wrong.
This immunologist says there's nothing wrong with getting the old booster until the new one comes online.
Being vaccinated against it can give you protection potentially against new evolved versions of the virus.
Health Canada says the bivalent vaccines will be available in Canada this fall, but the exact timing will depend on the approval, supply, and how local health authorities will distribute them. But with low booster uptake, the big question is whether people will actually go out and get the shot. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Record drought followed by torrential downpours. The weather mess that's hitting parts of the U.S. and the deadly consequences is next. And at 6:39, a live look at BC Place tonight in Vancouver. Is the heat here to stay for the whole week? Amy Bell has a look ahead at the forecast coming up.
My name's Shalina. Airports are no fun for Muslims because we always get singled out. I feel so much pressure about this that I might explode. But I've got places to go, so despite this treatment, I'm not gonna halal chicken out. I like to use airports just to try out my comedy. I mean, if I'm gonna get randomly screened anyway, why not take advantage of a captive audience? It's the worst when they don't laugh, though. The last thing you want to see in an airport is a Muslim bombing. Just to make sure I get selected, I'm wearing my fave t-shirt and Muslim scarf. Plus, I just got my hair done. Do you like it? You've been selected for a random search. I'm so excited! Yes! Then what's this? Oh, it's the only burkini I have that doesn't make my thighs look fat. That means you follow Sharia law? Nope. It's called Shakira law. It's a commandment in my religion. Thou shalt not shake your hips, nor your fatouche. Are you hot under there? I don't know. Ask my husband. I'm humble. Are you fasting? Yeah, I'm doing Ramadan, or what we Muslims call the Hunger Games. Where are you headed? Paradise. Huh? Paradise, you know, Hawaii? Miss, you've been randomly selected for a pat down. Really? Thank you so much. I owe you. Pat downs are so great. It's a cheap way to get a therapeutic massage. Ah, that feels so good. I hope she doesn't discover I'm cheating on my diet. Yep, turns out the most dangerous thing on a Muslim woman is my 3,000 calorie, artery clogging cinnamon bun. Go ahead, you can board. This won't kill anyone but yourself. Man, that was a tough crowd.
parts of the western United States are experiencing climate whiplash after brutal and historic drought and now extreme rain. Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi are all under flood warnings. And as Katie Simpson reports, scientists say this is only going to grow more common.
There was little time to escape danger. A summer's worth of rain, some 25 centimeters over the course of 24 hours, flooded the streets of northern Texas. Stranded drivers swam to safety while rescue crews jumped into action. A local journalist stopped his reporting to pull a trapped woman out her car window, carrying her through thigh-deep waters to safety.
I thought I was gonna die. Right then, I was just panicking because I just wanted to get out of my car and get out of the water. I wanted to get my car out of the water, but it's clearly gone.
It wasn't just drivers stuck in this mess. Homes have been heavily damaged too.
I'm freaking out. My apartment is literally flooding. I just woke up and should I call 911? What do I do?
The downpour was made worse by the fact Dallas just endured a long stretch of extremely dry weather, conditions that make it difficult for the ground to absorb heavy rains. It's just the latest part of the U.S. South to swing from drought to flash floods.
Oh boy, look at that, look at that. Yeah, you're telling me. I mean, this is nuts.
Similar scenes played out along the main street of Moab, Utah over the weekend. Flash flooding at Zion National Park swept hikers off their feet. This man holding onto a log survived, but one woman is still missing. And more than 100 people were stranded at a national park in New Mexico when the roads became impassable.
But the reality is that the climate is getting more extreme. It will continue to get more extreme as a result of global warming.
This professor says infrastructure must be updated immediately.
We're now in a climate where we're much more likely to get events that exceed the range of conditions that our infrastructure was designed and built for.
The Biden administration has earmarked $2.3 billion for climate-related upgrades. But those kinds of projects take time and won't do much to help in the short term. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Large parts of southwest China are dealing with a relentless heat wave that is drying up rivers and lakes. The accompanying drought has left many farmers struggling to save crops that are withering under the scorching weather. In central Hubei province, fire engines distributed water to some villages and to help with irrigation. Several fish farms in southern China have suffered mass die-offs of sea bass. Estimated loss due to high temperatures total more than $19 million. Extreme weather also triggered forest fires in some mountainous areas. Gosh, it just seems every year the extremes in weather all around the world just get worse and worse, Amy.
Yes, and that's a pattern, unfortunately, we'll continue to see. And for us, it's just playing out as hotter weather in the last couple of summers. Right now, we have very unstable weather, so we have these warnings up many areas of the province. These are all extreme thunderstorm watches and warnings. So the red is the warning and yellow is the watches. But obviously, this has been an issue throughout the day with areas being hit with this thunder and lightning just covered by that unstable air mass. That, unfortunately, will continue to play out overnight and early in through tomorrow morning before things gradually settle, and we'll see this ridge of high pressure building right across the province, and that's going to bring in the heat and also the sunshine for most areas. So the next 24 hours will be a little bit tumultuous for those areas in the central and southern interior. We will, of course, keep an eye on any of those lightning strikes. Over the next 24 hours, as we see this ridge of high pressure building, we'll see any precipitation moving far north of the province, and then just a chance of some precipitation, as I mentioned, over the next 24 hours with those thunder and lightning storms. For tomorrow, for the most part, though, I'm definitely seeing a swing towards that sunny weather starting on Vancouver Island. Just 22 in Tofino, but you brighten right up to sunshine. 28 for Comox. In fact, there is a heat warning for eastern Vancouver Island. You'll get up into the low 30s, so 31 for Nanaimo tomorrow. And we'll look at unsettled weather for Whistler. You have a risk of thunder and lightning, especially in the afternoon. We still have that risk, though, for Williams Lake in Kelowna and Cranbrook. That whole area will be under that watch for the next 24 hours or so. So definitely a little bit dicey. And then we'll see things drying up even further. So that ridge of high pressure sets in. That means we get the heat, we get the blue sky, but also very stagnant air. So we could see some of that smoke being an issue in many areas and just slightly smoggy in many spots. So 28 inland tomorrow, about 24 if you're heading down to the water, which is a great place to be. 27 on Wednesday, 31 inland. That'll sort of be peak heat. We'll gradually see it just decreasing a little bit as we head towards the weekend. By the weekend, we're looking at temperatures in those mid-20 range, a little bit cooler in the overnight hours, but we keep the sunshine, so definitely more comfortable weather is coming by the weekend.
Good news for sure. Thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
When the pandemic hit more than 2 years ago, more than a third of all Canadian performance artists lost their jobs. Last year's restart was lukewarm, but this year is turning around. And our Holly McGowan joins me now. Holly, you've been talking to performing artists as they return to the stage. What are they looking forward to?
They're excited, but they've been through a lot, not being able to perform for so long. So when gatherings were banned in early 2020, performing artists, festival organizers, producers, venue managers, everyone was hit hard. But this summer has been billed as the summer of recovery, and I connected with 3 artists to see what it's been like for them. One is dancer Shion Sky Carter. She was just out of university and about to kick off her career in 2020 when the rug was pulled out from under her feet.
I was really nervous that, all of these venues were being affected, events and festivals were being affected, and I wasn't sure if the postponed events were actually going to end up happening or not. So there was this feeling of being in limbo, this unknown. And now that things have opened up again in theater spaces, also outdoor festivals, it's really magical. That's the word I would describe.
Shion really represents a younger generation of performers who have had to struggle to stay afloat and stay employed during the pandemic. Not all of them were able to stay in the industry, so it's been especially exciting to see emerging artists take the stage now.
Absolutely, that's so encouraging. What about larger outdoor events like the festival circuit? What work is there for performing artists there?
Well, Matt Andrew is a DJ and electronic music producer who uses the stage name Matt the Alien. Not only was his lucrative career halted by the pandemic, but he also had a near deadly injury that changed his life. But seeing him on stage this summer, interviewing him, I really got the sense that no matter what, artists can't help but make art.
Doing something you love, you have that passion for it and you'll do it no matter what kind of thing, because you wake up and think about it, or I want to try this. As long as you can still do it and you do something you love, then you will still do it, rather than if you were just doing it for money or as a job.
Okay, so that's dance and live music. What about other performers? Which ones are finding their groove and getting new opportunities again?
Okay, so imagine telling jokes to a silent screen and a series of typed LOLs. It's not easy. Joanne sung as a comic, and she says virtual performances gave her the boost she needed to come back with even more confidence this summer. During the lockdown, she pivoted away from just doing her 9-to-5 and more toward comedy, which was mostly just a hobby before the pandemic.
I kept telling myself, you're in your living room, you are wearing your underwear and a nice top. There is nobody that expects you to be funny. They're all tuning in for a reason. A lot of them were free. Some of them were ticketed or by donation. And so the stakes, I had to kind of keep telling myself the stakes were low, and that if I wasn't funny, then I could just kind of look at it as practice.
And the great thing about this approach is that performers like Joanne maybe never would have chased their art without the space lockdown provided. So it's been quite the summer seeing all these performers get back at it and also come back with fresh perspectives and a new energy.
Absolutely. I know just being able to see live shows of any kind again is just super exciting, and it kind of gives you that feeling inside. So Holly, thank you for bringing us this story and these stories of these performers.
Thank you.
Well, the Killers played Rogers Arena this past weekend, and while they rocked the venue, the true killing came at the drums. Care of an invited guest. The surprise of a lifetime is next.
community of New Denmark has plenty of tall trees, but there's something here that dwarfs even the forests. Spanning a valley between two hills, this enormous train bridge was declared the second largest of its kind in Canada when it was built. Towering more than 200 feet above the Salmon River, the trestle spans more than 1.2 kilometers. In October of 1910, St. John's Daily Telegraph proclaimed that 10 years hence, it will be famous. But today, locals feel like the sprawling structure is their best-kept secret. The trestle was completed in 1911, made from more than 7,000 tons of steel.
I never saw another one like that, you know.
Eudore Michaud grew up in the shadow of this bridge. When he was older, he moved to Montreal for 18 years, but he missed the area, including the bridge and the trains, and convinced his wife to move back with him to a home under the bridge.
When you see the train cross, it looks like that train's floating across the sky.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's nice to see that. One time there were 8 engines in front of the train. Hey, that's heavy to pass on, you know?
He admits to free climbing the bridge when he was a kid, a stomach-churning thought. In Canada, it is illegal to walk on or along a railway. These days, he's much more content to keep his feet on the ground.
I don't hear it passing, and that's make me sleep. When they pass there at 10 o'clock, I go to bed.
It's the centerpiece of the community, inspiring Gunnar Peterson, who turns 100 next month, to spend a good chunk of last year building a model of the bridge.
I really never marked down the hours, but I know I know there's a few months on there.
Peterson first laid eyes on the trestle when he was 5 years old, an immigrant from Denmark. That was in 1928. So building this model was a way to pay tribute to the transportation link that continues to connect Moncton to Quebec City and the rest of the country. And despite being more than a century old, it still carries trains across this valley up to 10 times a day. And for those who live in the shadow of the bridge, they wouldn't have it any other way.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. Support sustainable agriculture and celebrate local food with Leanne Young at Feast of Fields. Enjoy the Gourmet Harvest Festival at the UBC Farm on September 11th. Learn more and get tickets at farmfolkcityfolk.ca. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
It was the thrill of a lifetime for a Vancouver musician who got to show off his drumming on stage last week when the Killers came through town. Pepo Velasco has been drumming for more than 20 years and is a big fan of the alt-rock band from Las Vegas. The band is known to invite people from audience up on stage to play. So on Friday, Pepo showed up at Rogers Arena with a sign and hoped for the best.
My sign said that I had practiced for weeks to play with them. And also I included something that said BPM 140. And 140 is the beats per minute for that song. So basically I was telling them, I'm not just like a fan that wants to play. I'm like a real drummer that wants to play.
Gotta do what you gotta do to get the call. He calls it an unforgettable experience and was even able to snap this selfie on stage with lead singer Brandon Flowers. Amazing stuff, something he'll remember for for the rest of his life, for sure. All right, you might think an unexpected geyser popping up near your home would be a bit of a novelty, but people in one Japanese neighborhood say it's actually a big nuisance. Here's one noisy reason why. The roaring is keeping people awake at night, and folks can't hang their clothes outside to dry because of muddy water in the air. The geyser appeared near a shrine in northern Japan a few weeks ago. Officials say the area has been a site for natural gas exploration about 60 years ago. And while visitors are coming to check it out, they're being warned not to get too close or light fires nearby. Yeah, not something you want to have your kid run through. No sprinkler, that's for sure. That's the CBC's Anita Bathe, who was reporting tonight for us. Thanks for being with us on CBC Vancouver News at 6. We just want to remind you, if you're not already watching our show on CBC Gem, you can do so. That's our free app. We'll see you tomorrow.